I think the most important thing for people to understand is that, even though we're in a very precarious situation right now with civil rights protections under attack, many of them being rolled back at the state and federal level, that the history of the freedom struggle tells us that collective action and that solidarity allows us to push back against those reactionary movements. And so the legacy of Brown v. Board, the legacy of civil rights, is still very much part of our collective legacy in history. And we need to embrace it, even though there are those who are trying to intimidate many of us and to keep us from talking about the reality of racism in this country. Even as that's happening, there are millions of others who know the truth, and we need to stand on that truth and make sure that our young folks understand that this struggle didn't end in 1964 or 1965 or 1968. But it's still very much part of the work that we need to be doing. History shows us that when we're silent about injustice, that injustice festers. And so in every generation, it's only been those who have talked openly and challenged openly injustice, inequality, discrimination, who have been able to change the country for the better. All the things that we take for granted in this country with regard to equal opportunity came about because people refused to stay silent. If it had been up to those who were in power in all of those eras, none of those changes would have happened. And so I think looking at that history and seeing ourselves as part of that history is what tells us that we need to raise our voices, much as people have been doing in this country for hundreds of years, for a more just society. I'm a child of Brown. I went to school in newly desegregated schools in Nashville, Tennessee, that were not integrated when my parents had been in those very same schools. I reaped the benefits of an integrated education. I reaped the benefits of the black teachers from whom I learned, the black children with whom I sat in class and formed friendships. I learned what it meant to live in a pluralistic, multiracial democracy. And I think we take that for granted. And in fact, in the last 10, 15, 20 years, we have seen a persistent resegregation of schools, not by law, but by neighborhood segregation, by socioeconomic status, so that schools are just as exclusively white or just as exclusively black in some communities as they were 50 and 60 years ago. And so the legacy is one that we have to fight to uphold and to remember and to push forward, because there are those who would take us back and actually were never happy with Brown v. Board. There are people who have been plotting ever since 1954, 1955 in the immediate aftermath to roll back school desegregation, and it's important that we don't let them win.
The very foundation and the essence of equality is this case. People across the state of Kansas, and as we now know, across the world, found that this case brought equality to everyone, regardless of race, creed, or color. And it started with the Supreme Court of the United States understanding that, separate is not equal. We have to continue to have these conversations because law continues to evolve. And with every day, as the Kansas Bar Association clearly understands, we have to have attorneys who are in the courtroom practicing and pushing and making sure that every individual has the right to stand up for their freedoms, to have the right to stand up for liberties, but also have the right to make sure that their voices are heard. If we do not continue to talk about the evolution of the law, then we miss an opportunity to make sure that all people are treated fairly and treated equally across the board. That's the importance of continuing to have this conversation, which is why the Brown versus Board of Education continued celebration is necessary for all involved.